And in related developments, on to the big exclusive story that we are breaking at this hour. A boost to India's bid to extradite Danish national Kim Davy. Danish Prime Minister Lars Rasmussen has told WION that he will cooperate with India politically to speed up that process. The Prime Minister saying there were issues in the legal process and that the Director General of Prosecution is looking into those issues. The Prime Minister also promised cooperation in the political sphere to bring Kim Davy to justice. Remember, a Danish court had refused to extradite Davy, who is the prime accused in the 1995 Purulia arms drop case. India has been trying for his extradition for the last 2 decades, to say the least. Davy is accused of dropping unauthorized arms, including hundreds of AK-47 rifles, anti-tank grenades, pistols, rocket launchers and ammunition in Purulia in West Bengal 23 years ago. So there is a huge forward movement that we are getting in when it comes to the extradition of Kim Davy. It's a boost to extradite the Danish national. Danish Prime Minister Lars Rasmussen has told WION that he will be cooperating with India politically to speed up the extradition process. This is a huge development coming also as a result of the bilateral engagements and meetings that Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi has had with his Danish counterpart, where Prime Minister Rasmussen of Denmark has assured India that the issues in the legal process when it comes to the extradition of Kim Davy will be looked into. The Director General of Prosecution is looking into those issues. The Prime Minister has also promised cooperation in the political sphere to bring Kim Davy to justice. Let's also establish for you what has gone on in the past. A Danish court had refused to extradite Davy. He is the prime accused in the 1995 Purulia arms drop case. India has been trying for his extradition for the last 2 decades. Davy is accused of dropping unauthorized arms. This includes hundreds of AK-47 rifles, anti-tank grenades, pistols, rocket launchers and ammunition. In Purulia, this incident took place in West Bengal's Purulia 23 years ago. The Danish Prime Minister promising action to his Indian counterpart. Remember, this is in the midst of Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi's bilateral engagements with the Nordic nations, during which during his bilateral with the Danish Prime Minister, there is an assurance coming in from the Prime Minister of Denmark. Let's take a listen in to what the Danish Prime Minister had to say.
They're having some contentious issues also, about issues of Kim Davy. What do you have to say about that? Are these issues being solved?
Well, these issues are, we deal with this issue in a different legal track. When I was Prime Minister the first time back in between 2011, my Minister of Justice took the decision to extradite him, but it was rejected by the court, the legal system. And now our Director of General Prosecution is looking into this. But it doesn't change the fact that today I had a very nice political conversation with your Prime Minister, and I think everybody recognized that we have to solve the other case in the legal track, and meanwhile in the political track we will restart our cooperation in this joint commission.
That is the strongly worded assurance coming in from Denmark Prime Minister Rasmussen, in as many words guaranteeing that action will be taken when it comes to the extradition of Kim Davy. Let's also take a step back and establish for you how crucial this is. India has been trying for the extradition of Kim Davy for as long as 23 years. This, of course, after the incident which took place in Purulia. Let's also tell you that this is coming right when the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi is in Sweden holding bilateral engagements and talks with the Nordic nations leaders, during which and while he was in the midst of those engagements, as a result of that bilateral with Denmark, there's an assurance coming in from Denmark that action will be taken when it comes to the extradition of Kim Davy. This is the first time a categorical assurance, a promise in recent times has come in from Denmark. The Danish Prime Minister has essentially assured India that Denmark will be cooperating with India politically as well as legally. Why that's important is that the legal process when it comes to the extradition of Kim Davy has had many hurdles. So the Denmark Prime Minister there assuring his Indian counterpart that the Director General of Prosecution will be looking into those legal hurdles as well. Let's go straight across now to Siddhant Sibbal, our correspondent in Stockholm, who's been getting us the very latest and establishing for us these breaking developments as well. Good evening, Siddhant. What more do we know at this point? This is a huge forward movement when it comes to the extradition of Kim Davy. India has been trying for it for the last 20 years, to say the least.
Well, big development. The Prime Minister of Denmark has spoken to WION and has said that he will back the entire procedure politically. The Director of Prosecution is looking into it. Strongly worded statement by the Denmark Prime Minister to WION, and it's perhaps first time that the Prime Minister of Denmark has spoken openly on this issue, on the Kim Davy issue. And of course, he said that we had a small interview basically, and he spoke on various issues. He talked about India's position in the world, how India is a major power, and he talked about how Prime Minister Narendra Modi is an influential figure. He said he's impressed by the Indian Prime Minister. He talked about India's economy, but when we asked about Kim Davy, the contentious issues, he said that he's going to back it politically because there are legal processes and now there are political processes. He said that he's going to restart the political process, and of course he said that the entire the ties between Denmark and India are going towards an upward swing, especially after this India Nordic summit. Remember, the Indian Prime Minister is in Sweden for the India Nordic summit. First time such a summit is happening between India and the Nordic countries. Of course, it's a second time because the first time a Nordic India or Nordic particular country summit happened was during the tenure of US President Barack Obama. But this summit very important because the Indian Prime Minister is engaging with all the Nordic countries. We also spoke to the Icelandic Prime Minister. She also lauded India's position in the world. She said that India is playing a constructive role, and of course on Indian Prime Minister, she said that he is basically changing India for better. So two Prime Ministers have spoken to WION on India, on Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, and of course the Kim Davy issue has also been will be backed politically by the political leadership of Denmark. Denmark clearly saying that it's going to back the entire procedure. And of course, if we talk about India-Denmark ties, they have been growing. Denmark has played an important role when it comes to India's white revolution. The Denmark's Prime Minister, when he was speaking to WION, he talked about how his country can help in renewables, renewable energy for India.
Indeed, what's also very important here, as you're telling us, Siddhant, is that throughout those engagements, the bolstering of ties between India and the Nordic nations has, of course, taken a huge leap. But coming back to the extradition of Kim Davy, what's also very crucial in those remarks made by the Danish Prime Minister to you during that exclusive interview is that the process is both legally and politically will be dealt with. Why that's also crucial is because there have been a number of legal hurdles when it comes to the extradition of Kim Davy. India has been wanting to get him back for as long as 23 years. The Director General of Prosecution, the Danish Prime Minister, has assured India will be looking into those legal hurdles as well. Establish for us the hurdles that have come in the way of Kim Davy's extradition.
Well, there have been a lot of hurdles, but today what has happened is from the highest level there have been assurances that Kim Davy, the entire procedure will be backed politically. The Denmark's Prime Minister said that he had constructive talks with the Indian leadership, and basically it's an upward movement in India-Denmark ties because we know that Kim Davy was a contentious issue, an issue that was a thorn in the ties. And today, after the bilateral, the statement coming from the Prime Minister of Denmark from the highest level on Kim Davy to be extradited because the Denmark's Prime Minister has said that he will politically back the entire procedure. It's a big development coming at a time when the Indian Prime Minister is here in Sweden for the India Nordic Summit, India Nordic Summit, and of course he held bilaterals with other countries as well. The day, of course, started with he having bilateral with the Sweden Prime Minister, and in that Sweden backed India's bid for the energy. So So a lot of countries are here in the Nordic supporting India in various ways, whether it's politically, whether it's economically. Remember, these countries are world leaders when it comes to innovation, when it comes to technology, something that can benefit India in its own flagship programs such as Clean Ganga and Swachh Bharat. So clearly, this statement by the Denmark's Prime Minister is another backing. It's a good news, at least,
absolutely good news
when it comes to Denmark-India ties.
It's a strong assurance that's come in. Let's take a listen in once again, Siddhant, to those words of assurance coming in from the Danish Prime Minister.
They're having some contentious issues also, you know, about issues of Kim Davy. What do you have to say about that? Are these issues being solved?
Well, these issues are, we deal with this issue in a different legal track. When I was Prime Minister the first time back in between 2011, my Minister of Justice took the decision to extradite him, but it was rejected by the court, the legal system. And now our Director of Director of General Prosecution is looking into this. But it doesn't change the fact that today I had a very nice political conversation with your Prime Minister, and I think everybody recognized that we have to solve the other case in the legal track, and meanwhile in the political track we will restart our cooperation in this joint commission.
That's the categorical assurance coming in from the Danish Prime Minister Rasmussen to India. Siddhant Sibal had that exclusive conversation with the Denmark Prime Minister. Siddhant, also this is important given how crucial it's been for India to actually ensure that Kim Davy is extradited and brought back to India. It's been a case that's been going on for 23 long years. Also, the Purulia arms case that we're talking about has been something that India has been stressing on for quite some time when it comes to engagements with Denmark, that it's absolutely crucial that Kim Davy be extradited.
Well, rightly said, because this is backing by the highest political representative of Denmark, and he spoke for the first time on this subject openly to any channel. And of course, he's saying that politically they will be backing the entire procedure because the director of the prosecution will be looking into it. And this is good news for India-Denmark ties. Ties, of course, were hit by the entire incident. So clearly, this Kim Davy could be soon extradited to India, something that India really wants and something that will be really good news for India-Denmark ties. Coming on the backdrop of this big summit, India-Nordic summit, which is taking place in Sweden, and of course the Indian Prime Minister's visit to Sweden coming after 30 years. The last time any Indian Prime Minister came was in the year 1988. So clearly it's a good news, not only in India-Denmark ties, but with other countries as well, because the Indian Prime Minister met all the 5 Nordic country leaders here in Sweden, and of course later on taking part in India-Nordic summit, which is a new format of engaging with the Nordics. India, of course, wants to engage with the Nordics with a single entity, in a sense, not separate different units, but pan-Nordic idea is the focus behind this summit that is taking place for the first time. We also discussed the issue of the India-Nordic summit with the Icelandic Prime Minister, who lauded the idea and gave hints that it can happen on a regular basis, and was open on this idea with other countries as well. So clearly a big win for India coming from this one-day-long visit by the Indian Prime Minister here in Sweden after 30 years.
Absolutely. Stay with me, please, Siddhant, as we continue to track the latest coming in. There are a host of reactions that are also trickling in on this big breaking development that we have got for our viewers. The Danish Prime Minister has given out a strong assurance to the Indian government that the extradition of Kim Davy will be looked into, and all the legal hurdles, all the political hurdles in the way of Kim Davy being extradited will be looked into on an urgent basis. Let's also get in strategic affairs analyst Sushant Serene, who's joining us on the broadcast for more on this. Good evening, Mr. Serene. Your perspective on how crucial this development really is, given that India has been trying to get Kim Davy extradited for at least 23 years now. Mr. Serene?
Yeah, sorry, I didn't get the whole question. Can you please repeat?
Sure, I'm saying this is an important development, a crucial development when it comes to India. It has been trying to get Kim Davy extradited for as long as 23 years now. How do you view this strong assurance that's come in now from the Danish Prime Minister, where he is saying that all the legal hurdles, all the political hurdles when it comes to Kim Davy's extradition will be looked into on an urgent basis?
Well, forgive me if I sound very skeptical. I think that's the right diplomatic thing for the Danish Prime Minister to say. But whether we will actually be able to extradite this guy after, 23 years, it will probably be a quarter century by the time this case reaches anywhere. I think it was, he pressed the right switches because the Prime Minister was there and, they were meeting and all of that. But beyond that, I would be extremely surprised if there was going to be any forward movement on this particular case. I think it's good that we keep pursuing it because people who have done, actions which are akin to waging war against India, we should continue to pursue that. But I think we should also be realistic in knowing that we might not be able to get his custody. We botched up the case right in the beginning when we let these people escape and we didn't crack down fast enough and we didn't pursue the case when it should have been pursued with the earnestness with which it should have been pursued. So it's good that the Prime Minister and India is continuing to raise this issue, but whether something will actually happen, I would be very, very skeptical about it.
All right. This, of course, is the latest that we're getting to you. The Danish Prime Minister has given out a strong assurance that Kim Davy's extradition will be looked into and all the hurdles surrounding his extradition will be addressed as well on an urgent basis. This is a strong assurance that's coming in from the Danish leader. This is the first time in recent years that Denmark has given out that strong assurance that Kim Davy will be extradited. This is in the midst of Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi's ongoing visit to Sweden, where he is engaging with leaders from the Nordic nations, during which he's interacted with leaders from Sweden as well as Denmark. And our correspondent Siddhant Sibul, who's on ground tracking the very latest on that summit, also spoke with the Danish Prime Minister. During that conversation, the Danish Prime Minister Rasmussen giving out a strong assurance that the extradition of Kim Davy, who is the mastermind of the Purulia arms case, 23 years ago is when the incident occurred. India has been trying to get him extradited for 2 decades now, but has been unsuccessful in doing so. And now there is a strong assurance coming in from Denmark that his extradition will be looked into and all the hurdles will also be addressed.